Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt are the two main candidates in this leadership election. But who supports them? Even if you don't agree with me, consider subscribing by the end of the video. In this video, I wanted to get into the depths of the leadership race itself, find out who's been supporting who, and find out how that divides the party. This is the line graph showing the support between the ballots from ballot 1 through to ballot 5. As you can see, the battle between Michael Gove and Jeremy Hunt for second place has been very, very close. But Rory Stewart was climbing up there once with 11.1% in ballot 2, only to fall 8.6% in ballot 3. A similar kind of swell happened with Sajid Javid, although it was much less of a fall. Let's go way back to the start of this contest, find out who endorsed all the initial candidates. James Cleverly was one of the first to announce his running before dropping out. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at each and every one of the candidates and find out which of these groups they are most supported by. So let me just explain these groups. So government payroll group are your ministers, the people who are more likely to support the government, the people who are more likely to support the withdrawal agreement, and anything that the current Theresa May government has supported. The European Research Group. These are you Eurosceptics. They don't all agree that we should leave the EU without a deal, but they are massively Eurosceptical and against the withdrawal agreement. The Brexit Delivery Group. This is a more centrist group of conservatives in the middle of the party who support leaving the EU with a deal. Other Eurosceptics are kind of similar to the ERG, but they're not necessarily affiliated with the ERG. The People's Vote. People want a second referendum on the final Brexit deal or on the terms of the final Brexit deal. And anyone unaffiliated doesn't necessarily belong to one of these groups, but may have an opinion on Brexit. So James Cleverly was 75 supported by people on the government payroll and 25 supported by unaffiliated people. One of his endorsers switched to Boris Johnson, one to Michael Gove, and one to Dominic Raab. Sam Guyana, 100% supported by the Conservatives for a People's Vote group. And one of his endorsers publicly went towards Rory Stewart. Not the biggest group in the Conservative Party, hence why he probably dropped out very, very early. Kit Malthouse, supported 100% by people on the government payroll. Of those supporters, 3 went towards Boris Johnson, 1 towards Sajid Javid. Mark Harper, he had 4 supporters who belonged to the ERG and 2 who belonged to the government payroll, 1 who was unaffiliated. So he had a 57% support from the ERG. 3 of his supporters went towards Boris Johnson and 1 towards Sajid Javid. Esther Mcvey, 100% support from the ERG with 6 supporters. 4 of those supporters went towards Boris Johnson and 1 towards Sajid Javid. Andrea Leadsom, 3 supporters from the government payroll and 2 from the ERG. 2 of them went towards Boris Johnson, 1 of them went towards Sajid Javid. This might explain why Sajid Javid did so well. Matt Hancock, he had 12 supporters on the government payroll, 3 supporters in the Brexit Delivery Group, and 1 in the European Research Group, as well as 1 unaffiliated. So as you can see, 70% of his support makeup came from government payroll. Of those supporters of Matt Hancock, 5 went towards Rory Stewart, explaining why he did so well initially. 4 went towards Boris Johnson and 3 went towards Jeremy Hunt. Dominic Raab, he had 17 supporters from the ERG, 3 from other Eurosceptics, 2 from the Brexit Delivery Group, 1 from the government payroll, and 2 unaffiliated. So over 65.4% support from the European Research Group. Of those supporters, a whopping 14 went towards Boris Johnson, explaining why Boris Johnson flew away with this result, and 1 went towards Michael Gove. Rory Stewart, he had 8 supporters from the government payroll. That's over 47% support. 3 from the Brexit Delivery Group. Those are the centrists in the party. 3 from other Eurosceptics, because don't forget he was trying to leave the EU still. But he still had 1 support from the People's Vote, perhaps the most liberal of candidates, and therefore he picked up support from the centre of the party and 2 from unaffiliated. 2 of his endorsers officially went to Jeremy Hunt. Now, not all of the switchers will add up to the amount of endorsers that began endorsing this candidate, because not all of the endorsers go public with who they're switching towards. Sajid Javid, he had 15 government supporters, 3 from the ERG, 3 from the Brexit Delivery Group, and 2 unaffiliated. So over 65% of his supporters came from the government payroll, and 1 of them went towards Boris Johnson. Michael Gove, look at the amount of yellow in these graphs. He had 13 supporters from the Brexit Delivery Group, as well as 17 from the government payroll. Don't forget, the government payroll is the biggest group, followed by the ERG, followed by the Brexit Delivery Group. They're in order of size. So as you can see, it's mostly black and yellow. 45% support from the government payroll, 35% support from the Brexit Delivery Group, but less of a support, only 3 supporters, and 8.1% support from the European Research Group. Jeremy Hunt, again, doing well in the yellow, but doing much better amongst government support. 29 total endorsers from the government, giving a support of 60.4%. 12 from the Brexit Delivery Group, 5 unaffiliated, and just 2 from the European Research Group. But take a look at the next candidate, see how different he is in terms of the colours that show up. Boris Johnson, the leader throughout the whole process, getting massive support from the European Research Group. 61 public endorsers supported him from the European Research Group, giving him 45.5% of his total support. But he wasn't unpopular amongst those on the government payroll either. 50 government payroll MPs supported him publicly, giving him 37.3% of his total support. And then amongst the rest of the party, 7 of the Brexit Delivery Group, 5 Eurosceptics, 10 unaffiliated, and 1 from the People's Vote campaign. That was actually Joe Johnson, his brother. So if we look at the government payroll preferred candidate, it pretty much follows the result itself. But if we look at the European Research Group preferred candidate, we end up with a much more different mix. 61 ERG MPs supported Boris Johnson, 17 supported Dominic Raab, and of course when he dropped out, all of their supporters went towards Boris Johnson, and 6 went towards Esther Mcvey. The split amongst the European Research Group for candidates was much more monogamous, whereas the split amongst the more centrist Brexit Delivery Group, you can see it's directly between Michael Gove and Jeremy Hunt, 13 and 12. That probably explains why they were so close during this whole contest. But it also shows the direct split between the party. Boris Johnson is 3rd on this list, proving that he's not the preferred candidate amongst the centrists who would prefer to leave with a deal amongst the Conservative Party, because they believe that he will implement a no deal. But in terms of numbers of supporters, you can see that Jeremy Hunt is way behind Boris Johnson. And according to the membership support, it doesn't look likely that Jeremy Hunt will overtake Boris Johnson and become the next Prime Minister of the UK. But do you agree with me? Join in the debate below and subscribe.